Wait, just a second. Do you mean to tell me that you actually hold a drill inside people's mouths with that hand?
Oh, of course not. I'll use this one.
Do you use any ether?
Just enough so I don't hear the screams.
You know, I got a tooth that's a little sensitive. Maybe I should come and see you.
Oh, well, now, why don't I just take a little look at it now? Open wide.
Hey, that's my ear.
What's it doing in your mouth?
This is my mouth.
No, that's your finger.
Foster Brooks' funniest moments. The timing wasn't an accident. The bar. In 1960, a 48-year-old radio announcer from Louisville, Kentucky drove out to California hunting for TV work. Nobody would hire him. He ended up managing an apartment complex instead. His name was Foster Brooks. 15 years later, he'd become one of the most recognizable voices in the country, even though most Americans still couldn't have named him. Here he is on the Dean Martin Show, walking into a bar scene. Watch how Dean reacts. Dean Martin was the most effortlessly cool man ever to host a television program. He built his entire career on appearing completely unshakable. About 90 seconds into this sketch, though, he's completely lost it. He turns his head away. He raises a hand. Ken Lane, over at the piano, is struggling to keep a straight face and failing badly.
I just dropped in for a little drink to settle my nerves before I go to work.
What sort of work do you do?
I'm an airline pilot.
Well, how did you get to be an airline pilot?
I used to be a bus driver. But I quit. Too many drunks on the road.
Nothing about the sketch is loud. Foster doesn't shout, doesn't stumble to the floor. He just stands there at the bar, earnestly trying to finish a sentence about being an airline pilot. And every single time he gets close to wrapping it up, something derails him right in the middle.
Oh, it's one of those big gray metal things with sticking out on the side.
Wings?
Oh, you an airline pilot too?
No, but I've been pretty high in my time. Did you ever have any close calls as a pilot?
Oh, yes, sir, especially since they moved the men's room to the back of the plane.
That's the entire act, a man simply trying to reach the end of a sentence. Now, here's something I want you to pay attention to, because it's going to matter more and more as this goes on. Listen for exactly where he trips up. Not the words themselves, the pauses. He never fumbles the key word. He fumbles the word right before it, so the key word ends up landing in a pocket of silence, and the whole room drops into that silence right alongside him.
You know, at the same time, it's quite a sobering thought and a very inspiring feeling to realize that there are hundreds of people on my plane, all depending on me. And to that, I happen to hold their lives right in the palm of my hand.
That's not an accident. Hold on to that thought.
Oh, I got it.
Yes?
Yes? I got to get to the airport because I'm flying a 740. I'm flying a 747 to London tonight, and the plane is scheduled to leave precisely 1 hour and 43 minutes ago. I'll see you around.
And Roy Fisher said, by George, that's really something. I never saw anything like that. Dad said, thought he'd go one better, you know. He said, that's not all that dog does, and I'll show you that later, some other time. He said, what's that? He said, he also talks. Now, Roy Fisher said, oh, well, I know about that. Now, Dad didn't know where to go from there, you know. And he says, well, how'd you happen to know about that? He said, my dog came home this morning and told me.
The Dog Story, New Year's Day, 1975. Foster Brooks takes a seat across from Johnny Carson.
We asked him on the first day of 1975 if he would come back again. He is now the executive secretary, or the executive treasurer. What did I say first?
I lost you.
Well,
he's been promoted.
He's been promoted.
Yes.
Would
It's
you
a high position.
Yes, it is. Would you welcome Mr. Philip Brooks?
Carson had a rule about comedians on his couch. If one was good enough, he'd let them run with it. He'd stop steering the conversation, set the pencil down, and simply become part of the audience himself. He did this maybe a dozen times across 30 years, and he does it here, over a story about a dog.
You know, and that's where you pick up the great ear for the dialects.
Yeah. I recall Dad was, we had a little Boston bulldog named Buster. Mm-hmm. And every night at 11 o'clock for some reason or another, for the longest time, Dad would say, Buster, it's time to go to bed. And this Buster would run upstairs, that little Boston bulldog, pull out a pillow out of the closet and circle around in it, and he'd go to sleep.
The setup is nothing much. A man walks into a place with a dog. That's the whole premise. Any comedian in America could have been handed that same opening, and most would have squeezed a modest chuckle out of it. Foster takes it somewhere the audience can't quite anticipate, and then he waits. The waiting is the real trick. He lets the room grow just slightly uncomfortable, 2 seconds, 3, long enough that you start wondering if he's actually lost his place.
He said, it's 11 o'clock, get upstairs and go to bed. So he did that for a while, until finally all he had to say was, Buster, and Buster would come look at the watch and go to bed. So now the man next door was over one night, and Roy Fisher was over home, and he said, Roy, do you know that's the smartest dog that ever lived? He said, what are you talking about? He said, he can tell time. He said, oh, come on, he can't tell time. He said, watch him. It's 5 minutes to 11 now. Watch him at 11 o'clock. He goes to bed every night at 11 o'clock. So 11 o'clock came, Dad reached in and said, Roy, see that? He said, yeah. He said, Buster? And Buster came running across the kitchen, looked at the watch, turned kind of shy like that, turned around, went upstairs, and went to bed.
Carson glances over. And then the punchline lands, and it's worth every second of the wait. If you've never seen Foster Brooks before, this is your entry point. Before you learn anything else about him, watch this clip and just enjoy the laugh. If you're already familiar with him, watch Carson instead. Watch him completely lose his composure. There's a moment where he stops being a host and becomes just a man at a kitchen table who can't stop laughing. 30 years of talking for a living, and he still loses it here. Now let me tell you something that reframes everything you've just seen. Before Dean Martin, before Carson, before Las Vegas, Foster Brooks spent nearly 30 years as a professional radio announcer, not a comedian who dabbled in radio, but a genuine staff announcer. WHAS in Louisville, later Wave, with stops at stations in Rochester and Buffalo along the way. This was an era when radio announcing was a disciplined craft governed by strict rules, and those rules centered on diction, hit every consonant cleanly, never rush through a clause, never let a sentence slip out of control. That was the job. That's what they paid him to do, week after week, for 3 decades. And he was excellent at it, good enough to keep doing it well into his 40s. Then he built an entire character whose sole purpose was to dismantle that very skill, in public, 1 syllable at a time.
I have never met Don Rickles. In fact, he's probably wondering what I'm doing here. He has never even seen. He has never seen me before. He has never heard of me, and our paths have never crossed. However, Mr. Rickles, you and I do have an indirect relationship. You see, I'm fooling around with your wife.
Think about what that actually means. Every stumble you just heard in that bar sketch came from a man who'd spent 30 years training himself never to stumble in the first place. He wasn't losing control of a sentence, he was deliberately placing the failure exactly where he wanted it.
So you see, we do have something in common. I hope you understand, Don, that we have tried to keep us very, very discreet. So don't tell anybody, will you? My wife would be furious if she found out about it. Don, I really must compliment you on your spouse, Mrs. Pickles. I say that because she's a real dilly.
He knew precisely where a clause was meant to break, because breaking clauses correctly had been his profession for decades. And he placed the damage in the single spot where it would do the most work.
You know, your wife thinks very, very highly of you, Don. She tells me you are a wonderful man. And I know that you must be to put up with all her snoring. She tells me that since she's been Mrs. Rickles, says every day with you is Thanksgiving. By golly, that's what she gets for marrying the turkey.
Nobody in those rooms ever caught his genuine voice, that was always the intention. So rewind and listen to the bar sketch once more with that in mind. His breathing pattern never shifts. Someone who's truly overindulged loses command of their breath, sentences start bleeding into one another, and the air runs short. Foster's breathing, by contrast, remains completely steady from start to finish. The trained announcer is still quietly at the controls. He isn't impersonating a drunk man, he's portraying a broadcaster who's chosen to undermine himself on purpose, and he never once loses the precise timing that would expose the trick. Which leads us to the night he pulled this off in television's toughest room. The room that never quieted down. 1974, the Dean Martin roast of Don Rickles. You need to understand what that dais actually was. Rickles didn't work with setups and punchlines, he attacked. He operated at full volume, full speed, and never let up. The comedians who followed him on those roasts generally tried to keep pace, louder, faster, meaner. Foster Brooks took the opposite approach entirely. He slowed everything down.
Mrs. Pickles? I say that because she's a real dilly. And I must also admit you have a very lovely home. Incidentally, you're out of scotch.
He walks up to the podium. He starts a sentence about Don Rickles. He doesn't finish it. He tries again. The room, which had been roaring at full volume for 20 minutes straight, starts leaning in, because for the first time all night, somebody is finally making them wait.
You know, Don, what your wife and I love to do most? Watching you while you're on TV. When you're on, we just laugh and chuckle and giggle, and sometimes we even turn the sound on.
This is the single clip, out of everything Foster Brooks ever recorded, that people have watched the most, millions of views, still climbing 50 years later. Watch Rickles' face while it all unfolds.
And we are always sad when you finish your act. That means you're on your way home and I better cheese it. Which reminds me, you're out of Velveeta, too.
Rickles is a seasoned professional, he knows exactly what's being done to him, and there's nothing he can do about it. You simply can't outshout a man who's barely speaking above a murmur. Dean has given up any pretense of hosting. The dais itself has essentially dissolved. And here's the craftsman's touch: count the pauses. They're not uniform. There's a short one, then a slightly longer one, then a long one, and that long pause always sits right before the payoff.
Now, please, Don, don't blame your lovely wife for any of this. Our getting together was all my doing. It's all my fault. I happen to be the one who answered her ad in the Hollywood Free Press.
He's building a staircase, and every step is a deliberately different height, so you can never quite predict where the top will be. An amateur pauses when he loses his train of thought. Foster paused on a schedule. Ted Knight. A few years later, same dais, different target. Ted Knight had just wrapped 5 seasons playing Ted Baxter, the news anchor on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, a character who was magnificently self-assured and wrong about absolutely everything. Every American with a television set recognized that voice, which posed an interesting challenge: how do you poke fun at a man who'd already built his career around being ridiculous? Foster's answer was to do what he always did: make himself the smaller man in the room.
Well, Ted, I guess your old hometown TV station looks small to you now. As a matter of fact, it is. We didn't have a big audience. Most of the time, the pigeons wouldn't even sit on our antenna.
The reason it lands is the same reason everything else does. He's not competing with Ted Knight.
Ed and I were quite a news team. He was green, but he was eager. I'd read the football scores, and Ted would just stand there waving his palm. I broke him in slow. His first assignment was, I believe, was to cover a fire. Remember, Ted? By the time he found the place, the fire was out. That didn't bother Ted. He started it again.
He's standing right next to Ted Knight, failing, and failure is quieter than confidence.
Like everybody, Ted has had his share of problems. When World War II broke out, he had a terrible experience with the U.S. Army. They took him.
So the room has to work harder to hear him. And a room that's working to hear you is a room that's paying attention.
A lot of you have been making jokes about how dumb Ted is. But I don't agree, because once, while working for a newspaper, Ted printed an article saying that the man was dead. Next day, the man called and was very much alive and demanded that Ted retract the statement. Ted told him, our newspaper never retracts, but I can put you in the birth column tomorrow and give you a fresh start.
Do you mean to tell me that you actually hold a drill inside people's mouths with that hand?
Oh, of course not. I'll use this one.
The wrong end. Later on the same program, Dean has a toothache. The setup is about as ordinary as television gets. A man needs a dentist, and the dentist arrives.
What kind of work do you do?
I'm a dentist.
Dentist? Oh, where do you work?
In the mouth.
And within roughly 20 seconds, it becomes clear that this particular dentist has developed his own theory about exactly where the problem lies.
I got a tooth that's a little sensitive. Maybe I should come and see you.
Oh, well, now, why don't I just take a little look at it now? Open wide.
And his theory is that the problem is located somewhere around the vicinity of Dean's ear.
Hey, that's my ear.
What's it doing in your mouth?
This is my mouth.
No, that's your finger.
Foster never argues the point, that's exactly what makes it work. A lesser comic would play up the confusion, the wide eyes, the double take, the shrug that signals to the audience he knows he's wrong. Foster instead plays complete conviction. He's examined the patient, reached his conclusion, and he's going to act on it with the calm assurance of a man who does this every single day.
I don't know, I'm not sure I trust you. Tell me, have you ever pulled out the wrong tooth?
Oh, never. Pulled out that fella's tongue once.
His tongue? Well, what did he say?
He said...
Dean manages one line before he's completely done for the rest of the segment. Listen to Foster's delivery here, because it's the exact same engineering as the bar sketch. He's not slurring randomly, the breaks land precisely where a sentence is most vulnerable, and every single one buys him another second of Dean trying desperately not to laugh. Archie Bunker's turn. Then came Carroll O'Connor. By the mid-70s, Archie Bunker was arguably the loudest man in America. All in the Family was the biggest show on television, and O'Connor had spent years playing a character who dominated every room he entered, the voice, the opinions, the chair nobody else was allowed to sit in. So the dais put a man in front of him who couldn't finish a single sentence.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Martini. Many people wonder exactly what service a public relation man provides to the star. My duties are threefold. First, it is my job to create. It's my job to create a public image for the star. And second, I have to see that the star constantly receives favorable mention in the press. And thirdly, I must see that he has plenty of broads on the road.
That contrast might be the best summary of his entire career.
With Carroll, the most difficult part of my job is convincing people that he is not like the character he plays in All in the Family. People are always confusing Carroll Bunker with Archie O'Connell. But of course, they're totally different personalities. Archie is a right-winger. And in the last election, Carroll was McGovern's man. At least until Eleanor McGovern made him break it up.
American comedy in that decade was getting louder overall. Rickles was loud. Archie Bunker was loud. And here was a man in a well-tailored suit, nearly 70 years old, who'd figured out that in a room full of people shouting, the one speaking slowly is the one everyone turns to watch.
People are always mixing up Carroll and Archie. They think Carroll hates people just because they're black. And that's not true at all. I was at Carroll's house one night last week, and he had 2 black people for dinner. And they were delicious.
He'd learned that lesson in a radio booth in Kentucky, decades before any of these people even knew his name.
The press is always asking embarrassing questions of me about Carroll. They keep asking, what does Carroll make? And I tell them anything that walks. Incidentally, I wish I could tell you just how the rest of the All in the Family cast feels about Carroll O'Connor. I wish I could tell you how Bob Reiner feels about Carroll O'Connor. I wish I could tell you how how Sally Struthers feels about Carroll O'Connor, and how Gene Stapleton feels about Carroll O'Connor. None of them is here tonight. So I guess I just told you how they feel about Carroll O'Connor.
The door he built. Harry Como is the one who discovered him. Foster had been performing the bit for free at charity golf tournaments across California. No pay, no bookings, no real plan. Como saw it and put him on a bill in Lake Tahoe. He was already in his 50s. He had exactly one character, and that character carried him through 15 years of television appearances and headline-level money in Las Vegas. Then American television's taste in comedy shifted, and playing a man who couldn't hold his liquor stopped being something you'd put on air at 11:30 at night. The bookings dried up. He kept working mostly around Louisville, largely for the charity tournament that carried his name. He died there in December 2001, at 89 years old. He built exactly one door, and it worked beautifully, until somebody eventually closed it. So here's what I want to hear from you, and I don't think there's a clean answer. Was that character the finest piece of craftsmanship anyone put on television that decade? 30 years of professional training deliberately spent making one man sound like he couldn't finish a sentence? Or was Foster Brooks simply a genuinely gifted performer who stumbled onto the one thing that worked and never got the chance to be anything else? Tell me which one you think it was. I read the comments.